Hi, good evening. This is the Cleveland .NET SIG for Thursday. What is it? It's November the 12th. And welcome. I'm Richard Broida, your presenter for the evening, host and presenter for the evening. I'm Director of Azure and Connected Systems Practice at Bennett, Adelson. I think all of you attending tonight have been here before, so I'll skip our usual intro formalities about making you introduce yourself and how many times you've been to the SIG and why you love the SIG and so on. This is our last monthly meeting for 2017. We're going to skip December and January for holidays, although for a lot of people it looks like holidays may have started a little early. But we'll be back in February. We're going to continue pursuing the theme of Azure as our main topic, since people seem to know most of what they need to know about .NET by now, and the Azure world is expanding rapidly beyond .NET. And we'll see some examples of that tonight. So tonight we're going to talk about applications and insights and monitoring. And it surprised me to find out this is the first time that we've ever had this topic presented here, because application insights has been a fairly major component of Azure-related development, and then, originally web development, and then overall application development, and now pretty much everything, at least in an Azure environment as well as outside of Azure. So it's become a very, really the workhorse of application monitoring from Microsoft. And we're also going to talk about something new called Azure Monitor, which isn't really new, but it's a new, it's sort of like app services where they've taken technologies that have been around longer and put them together so that they're easier to get your hands on, and they've added some cool new things on top. And we'll take a quick look at that tonight also. I will ask this usual show of hands question: how many of you are currently using application insights in your applications? And heads are shaking. No one is using application insights. Has anyone thought about using application insights? I guess you've thought about it enough to want to come here tonight. Okay, so we'll start with at a very basic level. This is going to be a very hands-on session. They're not a lot of my Azure presentations have gotten less and less programming oriented and less slide oriented and more demo. So I'm going to be showing you a lot of things in Azure. Please let me know if you're having trouble seeing, because we're going to be looking at a lot of words and numbers and text and charts and graphs in the browser tonight. And if they're not showing up sharply enough for your eyesight, let me know, and I'll see if I can enlarge things. So our agenda for this evening, we're going to talk about monitoring in general, which shouldn't be too tough of a topic for most of you. Then we're going to talk specifically about the Azure Monitor and application insight technologies at a high level. And then the rest of the evening will be demonstrations. I'll start out by showing you the Azure Monitor and just give you an overview of what and some examples of what that tool is and what its capabilities are. Then we're going to look at application insights in two parts. First, to monitor an existing website, that is one that was not developed with application insights. And then we're going to look at the developer's experience of incorporating application insights from the get-go and focus more on what you can do in Visual Studio with it. So the monitoring process, what do we mean? Now, one of the interesting things that's happening nowadays is that monitoring, when you talk about monitoring and management, I'm accustomed to talking about management and monitoring as two different things. Two different activities, two different things to address when you're planning and building some sort of software. But the divisions are coming together, because so many things that you'd want to do to manage a process you can now automate and trigger based on things that you monitor. and vice versa. The things that you monitor are becoming so fine-grained and pervasive that, you know, just looking at it, you know, constitutes managing it. So each of these steps here is really, you know, a part of a continuous process that you'd want to have set up. And I'm dividing it up into three big categories. So the first big category being ingestion, and this is simply amassing data, getting data from places, having things that can collect data, things that can send the data they've collected to some place where it can be analyzed and stored. And there could be any sort of process, you know, any different sorts of processing that might happen prior to storage or after storage to make the data more usable. This is also where you get concerned about retention. How long do we want to keep this data? You know, do we want to keep all of it? Do we want to keep some of it? Do we want to keep, you know, summarized versions of it, and so on? The next step is exploring the data. So we're at a point where the tooling and the technologies that are available now in Azure are geared primarily the way they have been all along, which is towards the use of a human being. Okay, being able to see the data, being able to query the data, you know, search the data, correlate the data, and discover things, observe things, learn things, make decisions about things. Okay, but you know, a human user in some role, some capacity, interacts with the data in some form or other. But there's a new phase coming in now, and it's already gotten further along than you might realize, and you'll see some examples of that shortly, where Microsoft is bringing its machine learning technology and its artificial intelligence technology over into the application and system monitoring space so that you can have intelligent machines looking at, studying, finding things out about your monitoring data for you, either when you ask it to or maybe when you don't ask it to. And then the last step is to take action. The actions that get taken, I mean, there could be no actions. You might look at everything and decide everything's fine, and that was reassuring, and on to something else. Or if you do find some sort of a problem, you might want to take steps to correct it. Again, that could be a totally manual process, but you could also have your monitoring / management system take action on its own. The action could be nothing more than sending an email or some other kind of an alert to somebody to say, hey, there's a problem, you know, go fix it. Or it could trigger some sort of another automated process. So you could take some of the technologies that we've talked about in previous SIGs this year, like Azure Functions and flows and Power Apps in Office 365 or Power BI. And that's the third thing. You can export your data into some other system or some other tool. It could be an analysis tool like Power BI. It could be a management tool like SCOM. So that, you know, if you have other data that you want to correlate with the data that came out of your monitoring system, you can send it off to whatever tool is providing that data or whatever storage is holding that data. And then further things can happen down the road once that takes place. Now, this is all built into the infrastructure of the Azure, you know, this is really the core parts of what we're going to look at tonight. There's lots of third-party tools and technologies available already from Microsoft and from other vendors that can integrate with this monitoring data. So if your company is already using some other big system like that, and they tend to be expensive systems, if they're using HP or they're using CA, then fine. Azure can work with that. Okay, so here are the sorts of things you could do if you're going to be monitoring, and this shouldn't be surprising to anyone. The first is checking on the health of your system. Is it working? Are we up? Are we live? Or have we crashed? Second, bug fixing. And that involves both discovering if you have bugs, and somebody may know their bugs. Users who can't register for the .NET SIG because it crashes when they try to click the registration button are going to know there's a bug, but I don't necessarily know that. The user might call and tell me, but they might not, or it might get lost in my email. So detecting whether bugs exist is the first step, and then if you do have a bug, what can you find out about it? And this is where one of the areas where Application Insights really adds a huge amount of power and potential to your ability to learn about what's going on up in the cloud. And this is also the area where running applications in the cloud is the most painful, because it's not on your desktop. It's not even on a machine that you can walk up to. There's no event log there. You don't have a file system handy where you can just look files up and see log information. It's not so easy to attach a debugger, particularly if that has. You can do that with certain app services in Azure, but it slows the application down. Not easy to do in production. So these tools have become a huge enabler for making it possible to make your applications more reliable when you're running in a cloud setting. Performance checking. So we're running and we don't have bugs, we're not crashing, but we're slow. Or are we? Maybe we're not. Maybe we're doing just fine, but there could be areas of the application that are not performing well. Maybe the code isn't written well. Maybe there's some external problem that's impinging on our application. Maybe we're sharing a tenancy at the subscription level that we've chosen, or the service level that we've chosen, and we're being too cheap, and we're getting crowded out by some noisy neighbor on our servers. So being able to monitor how fast things are going, and again, this traditionally has been a hard thing to do because there are so many moving parts, and when you're in a cloud and everything is subject to being, everything is virtual and everything can be relocated without you knowing it. The physical hardware that's running your app could be shifted out from under you at any time without you knowing it. So getting this kind of monitoring set up is a big help also. All right, threat detection. Now, App Insights is not the primary tool in Microsoft's arsenal for doing this. If you really are serious about keeping hackers out of your realm, you should be using security services at a higher level than just relying on Application Insights, and that's pretty much everybody, because we're becoming more and more aware that someone's going to try to hack into just about anything. Someone's probably tried several times to hack into my demos today. So if you do notice that, this may be where threats that get through the cracks of whatever other security protections you've set up. And by the way, in the demos tonight, I've set up no protections. So if suspicious things are coming from or if suspicious behavior is coming from certain places, we might be able to get either an early warning about a threat, or we might be able to gain some insight about where and how a threat came from by going through Application Insights. And lastly, business intelligence. So this is another fairly recent usage for Application Insights, and this is still not really, it has not traditionally been the focus, but Microsoft is getting into this game. Up till now, well, I won't say up till now, but most folks who are serious about analyzing the business performance of a web application or a cloud application are going to want to use Google Analytics or one of those other monitoring services that are very focused on just the business questions. Who is using the app? What are they doing with it? Are we retaining users? How many times does the same user come back? Where do users have the most problems? And on and on. And you can customize those things to get very specific if you're selling products and you want to know, the Amazon type stuff. Customers who looked at this also looked at that. It's not App Insights is not powerful enough to do that sort of thing, at least not yet. But they're making a go at it, and there's more built into it now than I realized when I looked at it, get ready for this presentation. So if you're not using Google Analytics, or if you want something that ties the information a little more closely to what's going on behind the scenes in your application, this can be a useful thing, and in any event, it doesn't cost much to look at that in addition to everything else you're getting. Okay, so having said that, let's talk about what the technologies look like. And this is a slide from the Ignite conference in September, the Ignite 2017 conference. Actually, several different presenters gave presentations on Azure monitoring in one sort or another, and I stole the slide from one of them. This divides things up into saying that the things you want to monitor are now this strikes me as a very IT-focused diagram here. I don't see platform as a service represented very well on here, but the things you might want to monitor could be looked at on these different tiers or layers, starting with the cloud operating system, that's the Azure itself, down at the bottom, up through virtual machines and containers, and then platform as a service, whatever that second of the top line is supposed to represent, and then the end user behavior at the very top. Okay, and the point is that there are different monitoring technologies for different layers, and this helped me get straight in my head what's the difference between all these different monitoring things that they've got now, and they've introduced several of these things quite recently, and basically they're saying application insights is at the top, meaning this is, like the name says, this is for getting insights into applications. Below the applications, you have what they're calling infrastructure, which would mean, that makes sense in terms of like virtual machines and containers, but I think that also means the plumbing that's underlying the platform services that you're using if you're running a PaaS, platform as a service app. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time tonight talking about those technologies, but we'll look at them briefly. And in particular, I'm not going to be doing virtual machine stuff tonight. So the network monitoring and the container monitoring are more VM, more traditional infrastructure as a service oriented. The bottom ones, Azure Monitor, Azure Advisor, Azure Health, and Azure Security Center. So Security Center is the one that you should be looking at if you're trying to keep malicious attacks out of your cloud-based applications. Azure Health is really about the health of the whole Azure infrastructure. So if you're wondering, if you're worried, has Azure gone down? Does Azure have outages? Did they forget to update some certificates again, or something like that? That's what Azure Health is for. Azure Advisor is an interesting one. That one is again applying the machine learning to various platform services that you can use when you may be depending upon in your application to give you tips about, hey, your SQL Server database could use some indexing, or you're using this technology one way, maybe you should try using it another way. And finally, Azure Monitor, which is, we'll talk more about that in a moment. Okay, so another slide from that deck. This is kind of just summing up the same kinds of things that I was talking about before. And in that presentation, they as a demonstration, they had somebody's Azure dashboard configured with, wall-to-wall application insights graphs and charts. So different application insight tools were used to generate this. Some of the things you're seeing here are just standard built-in, graphical views that are part of the application insight interface. Other things are actually custom queries that somebody built and then saved to the desktop. So that the query could be running all the time and showing results, and so some of these are things you could set up to be anything you want, and we'll look at a little bit of that in a moment. Okay, one more Microsoft slide here. let's see, I'm going to just load up everything here. So the bottom is a list of things that support Application Insight, a partial list of things. This was, again, as of presentation given in September of 2017. You can see a whole bunch of them are marked new. Some of these, like WordPress and Joomla, are just piggybacking on top of regular app services. But they now have full support for ASP.NET Core. I believe that's 2.0 they're talking about. They've got support for Kubernetes, which is interesting. So in the last year, Microsoft's become a full-blown, Azure has become a full-blown Kubernetes host. Azure Functions, Azure Service Fabric, ETW, Event Source, as well as things that have been around forever, like VMs and cloud services and web apps. Okay, so, and then these tools that you see listed on the right, again, I'm not gonna do too many examples of this tonight, but it's a nice list on the right of ideas for places you could send data to from App Insights, either just so they can have the data and do something nice with it, or to trigger actions to be taken. So Microsoft Flow, let's see, data access REST APIs, those could, and team services, those could actually do something in response to a report from App Insights. And also OMS connector, that's the new term for SCOM, the master tool for managing everything that Microsoft sells. Okay, all right, that's the last slide, other than slides that say demo this and demo that. So let's go and look at a demo. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you two different Azure websites tonight, as to illustrate things you can do with Application Insights. One of them is one that I wrote for this demo, and it's totally lame, out of the box, doesn't do much of anything, ASP.NET MVC app, but it's got some cool Application Insights stuff built in. The other one is this, which is the Bennett Adelson website. How many? I assume here that everyone has been to BennettAdelson.com at least once in their lives. That is, after all, where you have to go if you want to register for tonight's SIG. So here it is. Okay. So this is where we're hosting that website. It's hosted as a web app in Azure App Services, and we have it hooked up for App Insight. So the reason I'm using this one is that this has live data. This has real data. My demo is just fake data, or me impersonating an actual user. This is the real world for this one. Okay. What I want to show you first, though, is over here on the Azure master menu. Down here is the Azure Monitor. Okay, so I'm going to start out by showing you what Monitor is, and it's actually a little portal within the portal. Okay, all of these different monitoring services that you see listed on the left are services that you can get to other ways than here. This is really just a convenient place to put all the monitoring tools. I don't know if this is, in fact, all the monitoring tools that they have out there, but these are the ones that are getting the most attention anyway from Microsoft right now. Now, they're talking about having a separate portal, which is, I believe, in preview right now, but you have to sign up, and I didn't sign up in time, so I haven't seen it. But I think there's eventually going to be, this is portal.azure.com. There's probably going to be a portal.monitor, or maybe they'll call it monitor.azure.com or something like that, where if you have no business in Azure except to monitor and manage things, you'll go to that portal, and it'll look sort of like this, I guess. I'm speculating a little there. But that'll probably, at the pace Microsoft's been rolling this stuff out, I would guess that it'll be pretty soon that they'll have that at least available for public preview. So what's in here? Well, it's interesting. The first one they have is one that everybody probably would like to see, which is alerts. So these are here in one place. You can see every alert that you've set up on anything and everything that you're monitoring, with or without App Insights. Now, in our case, it's only App Insights. We're not monitoring virtual machines or virtual networks, things like that. But we are monitoring things with App Insights. But if we had things, alerts set up anywhere and everywhere, this gives you one place where you can find all the different email notifications that have been set up and who's getting them and what are the events triggering them. And you can edit, if you have permission, you can edit them all right here. And by the way, the usual Azure portal, role-based security applies to all of this. So you can give somebody read-only access to it or no access to it, or permission to create and permission to edit and so on. Let's see, this one, metrics. Okay, launch a preview of the new metrics experience. Let's see what that does. Okay, so what it's doing is it's giving you what I see this as is a very simple way to monitor or to get to different built-in charts or views of data that you're monitoring. Okay, it's fairly simple. It's not terribly customized. Now the time period here is probably why we're not seeing much. Yeah, well here, the last 24 hours. Let's give it 30. Let's give it 7 days. And still not showing me anything. Okay, some of this may be coming up blank because I didn't turn it on early enough for tonight's demo. But anyhow, you've got a fairly simple interface here and some nice built-in ways to go in and see things fairly quickly. This one is sort of the power users tool, log search. Log search is built around a query language that Microsoft has come up with. And the query language has been under development along with the monitoring technology over the last couple of years. It has, now I'm going to say, I don't remember, this query language has a name. I don't remember what they call it. It's not a very memorable name, or I would remember it. But it's basically, it's a lot like LINQ. And let's see, you can select, let's see, let's select one. It basically follows a pattern. Start by naming a collection of records, pipe the results, and if you're familiar with LINQ, that would be things like ordering, filtering, sorting, grouping. And then send the results to some kind of an output, and then do aggregating. So it's your basic MapReduce type of logic. Very simple syntax. If I can remember how, I'll try and bring one up to show you. Well, actually, I don't need to show it to you here because I'm going to be showing you some more interesting examples in a little bit. So we'll skip that for now. But this is going to be like the PowerShell place where anybody who becomes whizzy enough at this query language can go in there and query it for just about anything. And again, it can be, what you're querying can be spread out over anything that you're monitoring with, in any system you've got that's part of this, at least as far as this Azure subscription goes. Let's see. Oh, service health. I briefly mentioned this. Okay, so Service issues. Are there any service issues? Not right now. Somewhere here I can take this back in time. Find where that is. This is where the bad resolution of this projector is really cramping my style. But there is a place where I can set a date range. Okay. Here we go. See all past. There we go. That one, yeah. See all past ones in health history. But I still don't see where I can set a date range. There we go. There we go. Time range. So there have been no issues in the last week. How about the last 3 months? Oh, there was an issue. I gotta scroll back over to see it. There we go. Okay, so how many of you remember this service issue here? Between approximately 12:45 and 16:15 UTC on the 21st of September, right after the Ignite conference, a subset of customers may have received intermittent H503 errors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Planned maintenance. Customers tend to be interested in that. Well, there is no planned maintenance right now, but there is a history again. You want to look at that. And then health advisories. This is the big general one where they just say, is there any place in the world, are there any regional problems, any data center problems or outages? And again, it only goes back a fairly short amount of time. But anyhow, you can get a more detailed view of all this here than just that dashboard thing where it shows the map of the world and all the little green check marks. Okay, here's application insights. We'll come back and look at that shortly. Management solutions, network watcher. Down here are settings. Okay. And down at the bottom, advisor recommendations. And finally, at the very bottom, if all else fails, you can send us a support ticket. Okay. Now, this is one of many different ways you can get into the Azure Advisor service. This takes a little while to go out and query. This could take some time, but this will go out over your whole Azure subscription, and anything you've got deployed in Azure, it'll probe it for settings. It's sort of like an FX cop, where it looks for how you've set things up, and if it doesn't like the way you've set things up, or if it thinks you could do better, it'll make a recommendation. So here are 2 recommendations it's giving us. On one impacted resource. Oh, and also these are, notice how these are categorized. High availability recommendations, security recommendations, thank goodness we have none of those. And here's a cost recommendation. Let's see what that says. Its impact is high. Uh-oh. It says right size or shut down underutilized virtual machines. And that's a great idea, because I just found out today that we have a virtual machine that's been running for about 3 weeks that nobody is using, because it was set up as a proof of concept type deal for a customer, and we got the business. We're off doing work at the customer, and we don't need this virtual machine anymore. But we forgot to delete it, and it's costing us money. So look at that. It cost us 106. Does that say 106 bucks? 108 bucks we spent this month on a virtual machine that we used for about 4 or 5 days. So what spendthrifts we are. So if you've got a pencil sharpener type people running your organization, they will definitely like to look at that. I'm also interested in this I can't, high availability. Yeah, what's the deal with that? There was a tab up there, and of course I lost it. I'll tell you what. I'll look at it later. We'll see, because we'll have a chance to probably have a chance to revisit that. Okay, so now I want to show you I want to go back into our BA website setup. So we have a resource group, as everyone should, where all of our Azure things go into resource groups. So and in fact, the only permission I have in this subscription is to go into this resource group. There are other things we have in Azure besides this, but I'm only allowed into this one resource group, which is where the website is running. The interesting thing, or an interesting thing about this is that this website was originally built 2.5 years ago, and at the time we weren't using Application Insights, so we didn't have any App Insights code configured in there. But you can run Application Insights even though you have websites, and this is true not only in Azure, this is true anywhere. In Azure itself, if you're running a site as a web app or as a web role under cloud services, they have what they call Azure extensions, which will put the bits and the configurations for Application Insights into your hosted environment for you if you tell it to. It doesn't do it automatically, but if you say, yes, I want to use Application Insights, at least whatever's available in Application Insights for this particular site that I didn't build with that in mind, it'll say fine, and it'll let you create an App Insight account and associate it with your resource. So that being the case, I created this App Insight resource, put it into this resource group, and configured it to monitor the BA website web app, which was there already. Okay, so let's go look at that. Now, the other thing I should say is that under the hood, an Application Insights instance is a resource. It does, or it can cost you money. Hidden under the hood, and you don't really get to see a lot of detail about it, but hidden under the hood are the communication channels that it's using to actually reach the things that it's monitoring. And that includes REST APIs so that you can call into it. You can call Application Insights from JavaScript or from Java or some other environment that's not at all Microsoft oriented. But if you can call REST API and you can send in the right credentials, then you can put data into Application Insights from anywhere as long as you can get to it over the web. And then it also has storage, and you don't get to see what the storage itself looks like down at the file system level. But trust me, there's lots that you can get to see. Actually, let me. Oh no, I was gonna say. I'll look at it real quick. Suppose you're really cheap and you don't want to use Application Insights at all, or you don't think it's necessary, or your boss says, "Why do I need this?" Don't we have monitoring built into ASP, built into application services already? Don't we? Well, here's the monitoring section of the properties of our web app, and sure enough, there's a section here for diagnostic logs. And if I go in there, here's different kinds of logs I can set up. They can all be enabled or disabled as I wish. I've got to provide places to store these. This is basically the experience of logging in IIS carried over to Azure Web Apps. So these logs are practically identical. I mean, they may be exactly identical, I'm not sure, but they're very similar, at least, to the kind of logs you can get out of IIS. This one down here for web server logging, that's exactly what this is. It's straight up IIS style web log. This one here, application logging, that's the trace, the system diagnostics debug trace so on. That's where all that stuff will go if you instrument your code to do that logging. And then error logging down here, so you can have special places to put, just log errors either from within your app and or except errors thrown by the like 503s and 404s and 302s and those kinds of HTTP errors that really came from either the pipeline or the web server itself rather than your code. Okay? The experience of reading these logs is every bit as pleasant as it ever was with IIS. You just open it up and put on your reading glasses and start hitting Control F and looking for whatever it is you're trying to find in there. Or you pick up a monitoring tool that's designed to make this stuff look more intelligible. But that's it, and it doesn't correlate with anything. There's no putting the data alongside anything else, and there's no machine learning, for God's sake. So this is what you can get for free without App Insights, and it's better than nothing. But it's it's every bit as frustrating as things have ever been before when you've had to do this kind of going through Windows Event Log or going through IIS log files, or looking for where the application developer put the custom log files for the trace messages. Whereas with Application Insights, you don't have to do that. Hooray. Okay, so now let's start looking at what App Insights really does. Now, at this point, I'm going to need to really be a little more aggressive about making some real estate on my screen, because this slider down at the bottom of my browser is not making me happy. And what's annoying me is that this the menu bar on the left is taking up too much room at this resolution. But I don't. Does anybody know a way to shrink this down? I mean, this can flip in and out. I don't see a way to flip this in and out.
The line there in the middle doesn't change the cursor, does it?
No, it does not. Yeah, I mean, I can do Control Shift minus. Well, that helps a little. At least I can see the darn bar on the right. That's part of what was bothering me. Okay.
F11.
Hmm?
F11. Yeah. The browser would take up the folders. Well, usually.
Well.
That is Edge.
Function F11 or just F11?
Just F11.
Oh, Edge is taking up the whole window. I shrank the pane, the blade. All right, well, never mind. Okay, so some popular things you might want to look at are up here at the top. This is a nice one, 100% availability. That's good to know. Each of these things up here is also available over here on the left. Then we have some summary charts, overview timeline. So what is this? This is page hits, I believe. No, it isn't. It's response times. You can see there was a spike right here. This next one is oh, here we go. First one is just server response. The next one is page view load time. The next one is server requests and failed requests. We have no failed requests. Again, I'm very happy about that. Server requests, there were 281. Oops, it just restarted. Now, we'll come back to that in a minute, but I'm going to show you something else first. Down at the bottom, we have a total server requests by request performance. Okay. How many requests were below 250 milliseconds? 281 requests were. How about 15 seconds to 30 seconds? None, thank goodness. Now, again, that may reflect just that there wasn't a whole lot of traffic on the site during this time period, but nice to know. Okay. The first thing I want to show you, or I guess the next thing I want to show you, is really one of the coolest things in here, and that's this. And I'm going to have to change the time period for some reason in order to make this work. And here it is, time range. So we want to go back, let's go back 7 days. Okay. Okay, so in the last 30 minutes there wasn't any significant traffic, so it didn't. And by this view, unless otherwise noted, the data that you're going to see is not real time. Now there is real time data when you want to look at real time data, but by default, most of these things are within, I think they're like refreshed every 30 minutes by default. And you can configure some of that too, but it's still fairly current. This is called the application map. And this is first of all, if you don't know anything about a particular website or any kind of cloud application, you don't know like jack be diddle about it, and yet you've been called in to fix it, or you've been called in to make some changes to it. This gives you a dependency graph of the different parts, starting right in the middle. Now this application has a slot. It has a staging slot and the default production. Okay, so staging slot is down here by itself. It's disconnected right now, so I mean it's inactive right now, so it's not doing anything. But that's what this thing is. It's actually the same application, just a different slot. This is the production slot up here, and again we get some nice summary data here. We've had in the last 7 days we've had 4.2 thousand requests. We've had an average response time of 147.84 milliseconds, 0 failures. Okay. Now, over here on the left we're looking at the client side. Okay. Now, if I instrument my application to send data to App Insights from the browser, in other words, if I stick code into JavaScript that will trigger the sending of data points up to App Insights, and there's a key for this application insight instance, which will be buried away in the JavaScript code that I stick in. And I'm not going to write this code either. I'm going to copy and paste it from Azure. But it's going to call into App Insights. It's going to present a token that authorizes it to get in there, and then it's going to have a key. It's going to identify which App Insight instance it's going to. But anyway, if I do all of that, I'll be able to monitor the performance of the JavaScript code or whatever's going on in the browser, and this will be aggregated across everybody's browser. So if I have performance problems going on, in the client in the front end. And I believe this is also coming, if it's not there now already, for mobile apps too. So, for native apps built with either Xamarin or Cordova, I don't know if it's going to cover. They'll probably have it for iOS and natively and Java natively for Android. But you can do the same thing if you're trying to you've got an application with smart clients running on mobile apps. Okay, what I have is a health monitor, which is just a simple ping test. Okay, and I'll show you that in detail in a minute. But this, unfortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of the hits that have been registered, views that have been registered on the page, are just plain pings. That is, an HTTP for the root. Sent to the default controller just to make sure the app is responding. Okay, and I have that configured to send an email alert out whenever it fails 5 times in a row, and it's doing it like every 2 minutes, I believe. So if our site is down for 10 minutes, this is gonna trigger an alert and send an email. Okay, now 10 minutes may be way too long for some sites, so I can change that. As long as I'm willing to tolerate the traffic of pings going through. Okay, but this is a little tool. It's built right in. So instead of having to write your own little heartbeat pinger, you've got one provided for you. Now the interesting part really though is over on the right, because these are things that Application Insights detects that our website is calling. Okay, and it divided them up into two categories. There's WCF services, and there's, let's see what those are. Oops. I click over here and scroll over. So why do I not see the bottom scroll bar on the window? That's what because the resolution of this projector is not good enough. All right, we'll do it that way. I guess I'm used to doing this on 1080p resolution and everything's visible. So now I'm on a dinky little projector, and I'm finding out that there is no scroll bar. You got to drag it like this. Okay, fine, we'll do it that. Okay, so what's this doing? This is calling to bacrm.api.crm.dynamics.com. So that is a call to Microsoft Dynamics CRM Online, which is where we actually keep our .NET SIG registration list. Okay, so all of you, if you've registered for the .NET SIG before, you are a contact of Bennett Adelson listed in our CRM system, and we are using this to, we're making WCF calls because that's the API that we used at the time. It has a REST API now, which we would probably use if we were writing this today. But nothing wrong with good old WCF, so we're using that to. I think there's nothing wrong with good old WCF to create the registration. Now I'm gonna do something because we had some problems. Some of you people said you had trouble registering. I'm gonna see if I can. No, I'm gonna go back to the time frame. Oh, it's still up here. So we went back 7 days. Let's go 30 days.
Failure was the last hour I tried.
Last hour. Okay, well, because I was hoping that we'd see some failures over here, and I don't see any.
0.2% failures.
0.2% failures. Oh, so 0.2% failures, and that gave us a green check mark. Okay, that's going to give me a good excuse to launch into something in a minute, but I'm going to come back to that. So there were 430 calls made, and they took an average of 550 milliseconds each, which is kind of slow. And then this disco thing is some metadata for CRM. We won't worry about it. Okay, so that's that. Then there's also an HTTP, couple of different HTTP services being called down here. This Talio is a service, it's a software as a service that we use for job applications. So there's a link on our web page if you want to apply for a job to send us some information. And that goes through a service called Talio that we subscribe to. So these are the requests. So we've had 20 calls to Talio being made here. So maybe 20 people want to get jobs with us. 51 degrees, I believe, is Google Analytics. Anybody know that for sure? We are using Google Analytics, and I'm actually going to talk a little more about that in a minute. But so I think that's what that is. And then login.Microsoft Online. We use integrated security with Azure for people that can log in. So we have that that service there also is being called. So again, if any of this was failing, we'd have a quick way of telling whether that's where the problem is, and tell just by looking here without having to look at our source code, without having to open up a log file and ponder through it. It's all just right here. Okay, let's go back to. All right, so we had 2% failures. It says that didn't get it alarmed enough to take away the green check mark. But I'm gonna click this curious little button right here, and this is going to take me into something called App Analytics. Okay, so this is a query engine. It's the same query engine that runs in the log analytics tool that I showed you way back that runs in the Azure Monitor. So throughout all of Microsoft's monitoring technologies, if they're going to have ad hoc querying support, they're going to use this query language. And they have queries built in. Yeah, wow. They have queries built in that, and here again, now I'm not going to be able to drag around like I was. Let's see, hang on here. One moment. So that freed up a little room. Actually, that looks like pretty much everything. So maybe I had to hide the taskbar in order to see something. Okay, so dependency count by result code. Okay, and here's the query written out for us. Dependencies, so dependencies is the collection of data that we're going to be querying, where the timestamp is greater than start time and less than the end time, and the client type is PC, and the type of the call is WCF service, and the target is the address of our CRM service, where cloud role name is BA website, and so then summarize dependency count. So summarize something called dependency count, which is going to equal to the sum of the item counts on the dimensions of result code and a transformation of the timestamp. Okay, and then render it as a bar chart. Okay, and the bar chart is supposed to be visible down here. Now, there isn't any data here because the time span is from...
There are 2 records.
Pardon me?
There are 2 records.
Where are they?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it shows the...
Where do you see that? Oh, here we go. Two records? Yep. Okay.
Maybe the projector can't resolve the difference in color. You're seeing something when you go over it.
Yeah, I am. You're right. Well, maybe that's it. Maybe the projector is the problem. I wonder if there's a way to change colors.
See, you can see the legend over on the right.
Uh-huh.
And those are the 2 colors. You're only seeing the 200. I don't know.
Oh, there we go. Well, yeah, 200 result codes and 500 result codes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's do this. Let's try, again, that, okay, you wouldn't believe it, but I'm actually highlighting that. Okay, and then go. Syntax error, what? Yeah.
Double equals.
Oh, double equals. Okay. Double equals.
Well,
Recognition error. Ask the community. Well, the problem is I don't know. This looks right to me. Pardon me? Let's try that. Oh.
I don't see line numbers. It says line 9, position 2.
Well, let's see. Line 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, right here. Am I supposed? Oh, maybe this is why I'm supposed to.
Continuation.
That vertical bar is not optional. There we go.
I guess we need it.
Okay, now, suppose I take this render bar chart out. Let's do this. Let's go to table. Okay. So at least we can see it now from here. So it happened on 11/13. That's today. At 0 hour.
It's the 14th.
Okay, sorry, yeah, that was yesterday at the 0 hour, and it got a 500 error. And I'm getting a little help with syntax here. I want to throw some other stuff in like that. All right, let's go back and look at this time span for a minute. The date range is from 10/15. Oh, it's a month. It's 30 days. So interesting. Okay. Now, there's another query already built in that we could switch to instead. Again, yeah, the projector is just doing a terrible job of rendering these color schemes, because this is actually, just by clicking into this text down here, I'm actually selecting the entire block of code. And if I hit go here, I will get a different query, which again is not showing as much.
SQL Manager, you can select a piece of code and then go.
Yeah, except it selects the whole block of it for you, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, the syntax itself, once we get through some of these little quirks about it, is fairly straightforward. You have a let keyword for declaring a variable. The line ends with a semicolon. All right, so each of these is a totally separate statement, terminated by a semicolon. And then you have what's like a link statement, where you know the data source comes first, and then you apply any number of where clauses, and then summarize as an aggregation and dimension dimensionizing statement to break up the results, and then render controls what kind of an output it gives you. And again, if I go to table view, I can actually see the data, the raw data here. Okay, let's go to another example. So I'm going to shut all this. Now, Bobby, notice also that when I clicked this back here, back on the map, it opened all this up in a new tab. Okay, so I can close the whole tab when I'm done querying it, and I can have multiple tabs open. So let's try now. Let's do something a little simpler. Let's try doing the analysis analytics on the website itself, and see if that gives us anything that we can see a little better. And again, I know there's data there, just can't see it. One record. But again, the time span is, what's the time span? 10, 15, and 14.
Yeah, it's just the request count. How many requests?
Mm-hmm.
So you're summarizing.
All right.
Total.
I'm very disappointed that this projector is not making it easier to see what all this looks like, because it's actually pretty cool.
If we went to the table, we'd probably see like the total number of requests, or, well, that's not request duration.
Let me look at something else here. Try changing our theme to dark. Oh, here's another feature. So by default, it always displays everything in UTC. And if your brain isn't agile enough, or if you're in too much of a furious panic to transpose UTC into whatever the local time is, you can set it here to go to local time. Now, do I have to save this, or is it just going to do it? Let's see. Well, it's dark, all right. Try running query again. Well, that didn't help.
Well, at least we can see some shading.
Yeah, at least that. Let me try that again.
Well, no, I mean, it's probably there. Well, look at the table and see what the request count is. It could be 0.
No, it's 4,173, and it should be, and it's displaying this. The render clause here says time chart. Time chart is a line graph.
Oh.
Okay, so there's a line snaking away through here. Let's see. Or I can have it in various ways. Let's try area. Area charts don't work. Okay, let's go to column. Will that work?
Yeah, okay, that's the exact amount right there.
Okay,
We just couldn't see the line.
let's try another one. No, it's still not right. There's columns inside this big gray blob.
There's just the one.
So I think that is one big bar to this
Yeah.
whole thing.
Okay, well, we'll come back to this. Hank, what time we got? 7 o'clock. Got a half hour. Okay, so anyway, this is all stuff that I'm able to do just with a website, like I said, didn't get created with any fancy App Insight stuff built in. Now, what if you do want App Insight stuff built in? Well, let me show you how that works now. Back to Visual Studio. Okay, so I have here an application that I already prepared for tonight that has App Insight stuff built into it. Okay, but this is after I've tweaked it a little bit. I'm going to show you just briefly, I hope briefly, the process, how this enters in when you're creating a new application in Visual Studio, because the process has changed a bit since App Insights first came on the scene. So I'm just going to really quickly create a new project, and I'm going to just I'm going to make it a .NET Framework 4.61. That's fine. Let's put it under projects, .NET SIG, and we'll call it local app. Let's call it App Insights Demo Local. Okay, so this one is just to show you real quickly what a new application, how Application Insights works in a brand new app. I'm not going to deploy this to Azure, but I will connect it to App Insights. Actually, it's going to be connected pretty much for me. So that's my app name, and we're going to create. Okay, and we'll just make it a plain old MVC. Oh, but I will do one thing. I will switch to authenticate with individual user accounts. The reason I'm doing that is just to force it to put a SQL Server database behind it. Okay, so I can show you, and I'm not going to do much about that in this application, but in the next one that I'll show you, I did the same thing, and so we have a SQL Server behind it. And we'll wait while it grinds things out. Do. There used to be a checkbox, and it's gone now because Microsoft has decided that you want Application Insights in your app, don't you? Of course you do. So you're going to get it, whether you ask for it or not. Okay? Consider it a freebie. So you can see right here, so this is a spanking new application that I haven't touched, and already, in the vast list of things that it stuck references to, Right here is Application Insights. But this is just one Application Insights assembly, okay? That's the only one that it's referencing. If I go down here to Packages Config, suddenly I've got Application Insights Agent, Dependency Collector, Perf Counter Collector, Web, Windows Server, yeah, that's it. Okay, so there's a bunch of other App Insights packages that are in my package config, but they're not actually being used, they're not being referenced in my project yet, but they're there. Microsoft decided to go ahead and throw them in. If I go down and look in my web config, there are a couple of places in here already that are making reference to Application Insights, like right here. Okay, so this gives us a clue. It's setting up an HTTP module, which is what that assembly that it's referencing must be providing. Okay, so there's an App Insights module going into the ASP.NET pipeline, and then that's being installed here in the web server section, right there. Okay, so it's putting the module into the pipeline. Just because it's there in the pipeline doesn't mean it's doing anything, and in fact, it's not doing anything. So if I run this app right now, I won't get any Application Insight behavior. Those assemblies are just along for the ride. Okay, I won't do it, but I'll mention that what I should do next, if I'm really going to continue with Application Insights, is I should be updating. Actually, it may prompt me to do that. It is going to prompt me to do that, so never mind. There's also an Application Insights config file right here, and this is basically like a dependency injection type deal, where it's in case my code wants to use Application Insight features, or in case the environment that we're running in wants to use Application Insight features, it's telling the runtime what .NET modules to load. And so we're adding all these different components that, again, presumably are all installed in packages config, but they're not necessarily being used in the application. So you're sort of carrying Application Insights around like a germ when you create a new project in Visual Studio 2017. I do not recall whether this is the behavior in 2015. I do recall very well the days when it used to, you had to check a box. Well, you got a box that was checked by default for you that said Add Application Insights. But all that did was what this just did. It didn't make you use Application Insights. It just put some dependencies into your code, or not even into your code, into your project. Okay, so that's what happens if I just create a project. Now, if I do want to use Application Insights, and of course I do, because that's what the whole SIG is about, then there are several ways to do it. Actually, doing it all by hand is quite messy. As you saw how many packages there were. Microsoft has thoughtfully, in Visual Studio 2017, provided this little easy step right here, where you can just right-click on any ASP.NET project, and it will detect if the minimum number of Application Insights packages are present in the project. And if they are, it'll give you this pop-up menu choice, which I'm going to click in a minute. You don't always see this, okay? And if you don't see that, like if there were no Application Insight assemblies in here at all, you can still get to that by going to the project menu up here, which is sort of the last resort of help. I don't know what to do. You know, I'm supposed to find something when I right-click and it's not there. A lot of times you bail yourself out by going up here. And here's Application Insights up here, which will do, I believe, the exact same thing. Let's try it. Open. So in both cases, it's just going to say, open the Application Insights portal. That's this. Okay, Application Insights portal. Oh, actually, no. This is not the Application Insights portal. That's what we were just looking at in Azure. Okay, so first it tells me that my SDK is out of date. The Visual Studio template installed version 2.2.0, and we're supposed to have 2.4.1. So this is going to be a quick little convenient, colorful, animated shortcut to updating NuGet packages. This is actually, all this is actually doing is managing NuGet packages and getting latest versions of all the packages in there that have to do with application insights. Okay, so we did that. Then it's going to say, gain insights, do all these cool things, start for free. Okay, well, nothing wrong with that. So now I have to create my application insights account. And again, this is what you had to do before when you chose. Actually, I'm remembering better now. When you check that box previously in Visual Studio 2015 or 2013, it took you to a dialog like this, and you had to set up the account for the resource in Azure. So what account you want to use? I'll use that one. Here's the subscription I want. And let's give this thing a name. That's a nice name. Let's use that. Let's see. Oh, I want to click this too, configure settings. This is where I get to pick the resource group. Okay, they consider this some sort of advanced thing. If I don't change anything else, it's going to go into a resource group that's been thoughtfully created for me already called Default Azure Application Insights, East US. I'd rather not. I'd rather create a new one. So I can click there, and it suggests a name for me, the same name as the other. Clarify, I'll put an RG after it. All right. So now I'm going to put it into a new resource group just so it's easy to delete later. Okay, so now we're all hooked up with the subscription. Here's a little pricing information. It's free. I get 1 gigabyte of data per month, which I think my little demo will manage to live with. If I use more than that, it's going to cost $2.30 a gig per month, subject to my spending limit. And it will retain my data for 90 days. Okay, if I want more than that, I can sign up for a more expensive plan. And there's a link here that'll take me to a pricing page. It'll tell me how much more I'd need to spend if I wanted to be really serious about it. Because a gigabyte sounds like a lot, but if you're Amazon or if you're Facebook, I think that's not going to be nearly enough. Now, actually, there's a spending cap choice right here. Allow application insights to collect data beyond 1 gigabyte a month. No, thank you. This is just a .NET 6, so I'm going to say nope. We're going to cap it, and we're going to make you stop working. Okay. So we'll keep it free. So I've spent plenty this month. I need to stop spending so much. Yeah. No, I chose the pay one. Pay extra was the default, and I clicked on no, cap it. It's still free up to 1 gigabyte.
Yeah, all data collection after 1 gigabyte
Mm-hmm.
is the bottom one. Looks like the top.
No. The little black circle in the white circle means that's what I selected. That's part of the visual grammar of Azure. They don't use checkboxes. They don't put X's or check marks. They put little black circles inside of circles. Okay, so it did all that. Now, for some reason, it has one more setting that's optional, which is to enable trace collection. I believe what that means is that, again, my system.diagnostics.debug.trace, etc., those little statements in my code will get saved into App Insights if I select this, which sounds like a great idea to me. So I'm going to do that too. Okay. Now, if you were paying attention while we were updating over here, this threw in a whole bunch of changes to the references. Well, you can see already. I mean, in addition to the original one that was there, we now have trace listener. Well, we have one more here, I guess it is, and then over in Team Explorer, you can see that it made changes to all these files here to accommodate the settings. But the most important thing is that up in the cloud, there is now, in my subscription, there is a new Application Insights resource and a new resource group, which is going to be collecting the data that I generate any place I run the app, starting with right here in Visual Studio. So I can now launch the app in my favorite browser, which I hope is not on the other screen. I bet it is. There it is. Okay, so here's the app. I'm on the home page. I can go to the about page. I can go to the contact page. I can register a new account. And boy, we sure can't see that either, can we? And where I can log in as an account I've already got and go back to home, and so on and so on, okay? Now, as I'm doing all that, while I'm debugging, I have a new little tool, little drop down up here for application insights, and this is the main interface that Microsoft has built into Visual Studio, and this is totally different from the portal interfaces that are up in the cloud. This is, it's called Application Insights Search, but what it is down here in the middle, there's a reverse chronological listing, a trace, of all the App Insights data points that have been generated so far by my application, and they're all either service response time metrics, or they are, and this is just a trace warrant. All right, this is actually a trace. Remember I said enable trace logging, so this is a trace that got logged, warning me that I don't have performance counters turned on. And then here's the request that was made to the home page. If I can click that, I can see lots and lots of details about it. This operation ID helps to tie different requests, different HTTP requests together, so I can keep track of the notion of a session. All right, then here was another request to get the about page and a request to get the contact page, and so on and so on. In each case, I'm seeing the result returned was 200. There's the URL. Here's whether it was get or post. Client IP address, well, it's me, so it's, what does that say, S1? No, just number 1, and so forth. Okay, so I can see what the stream of diagnostic data looks like in Visual Studio as I'm running the app. And then the other really cool thing that this thing does in Visual Studio is it uses the code lens feature. How many of you use code lens all the time? There's a hand. Anyone else? So code lens is actually one of my favorite. Oh, you have to have the Enterprise Edition. Do you? Okay. Well, good reason to get Enterprise Edition. Yeah. Well, if you have code lens, then you can actually see right in your code how many requests have been made. So this can be a lifesaver, especially if it's web API and you can't, you either have to have Fiddler going to say, which API methods did it call, and where did they come from? Right here. It says there was one request. Here's details about it. Investigate. Let's see. Not a lot of requests there, but analyze. So, I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling how many different things you can look at in here. But just being able to tell how many times in this debug session did this particular thing get called, and what was the result each time, is huge in my view. Okay, so so that's what one does to get up and running with App Insights in Visual Studio now. Not, if you're using MVC, not a whole lot. They have documentation for what to do if you're working in other languages, other platforms. If you're writing a pure, if you're writing a Node application that has nothing but JavaScript, or if you're writing for Xamarin or what have you.
I'm sorry, my mistake. CodeLens is available in the professional edition as well.
And how much is that?
Oh, that's the cheaper of the two.
So CodeLens is available in professional edition,
Not the community.
but not community edition. Well, come on now, community. I think it's $3,000, something like that for professional. You're a professional. Oh, maybe so. We're spoiled at Bennett Adelson. We have enterprise. We do. Well, you have to. There isn't any such thing. There really isn't any such thing as buying Visual Studio anymore. It's the other way around. There's no such thing as buying an MSDN license anymore. You buy Visual Studio and you get MSDN. They're one and the same now. Anyway, all right. Let me switch over quickly to my other demo. So this is the one I worked on before.
We're going to see some data.
No, not really. Not really. Okay, well, this one, I'll tell you what. Let's go look at this one up in the cloud. Okay, so this one I've already not only did I write it, but I published it. I created an Azure resource group for it, and I guess the main thing I want to show you is something I talked about a lot earlier and haven't shown you at all yet, is this business about debugging. So just to give you a really stupid, crude example, I went into the account controller. I think it's this one. No, not this one. Excuse me. I went into the home controller. That's right. And I went to the about method here, and I made it throw a divide by zero exception. Okay, because I was just having one of those days where I felt like being a little trollish. Okay, so now if we debug this, and we go to the about page. Oh, come on. Okay, so it throws an exception and stops in Visual Studio, and vomits all this out on my browser. Okay. Well, if I do that in the cloud, because I didn't change anything to the error reporting part of the web config, if I do that same thing, I'll get this, right? Okay, and this is what I'm supposed to get, because I'm not supposed to be showing all that messy garbage to anybody that comes along and figures out how to crash my website. Okay, but I want all that rich error information captured for me, and that's what Application Insights does.
That's exactly what it says on the registration page.
What's that?
Error occurred. Well, that exact. Yeah.
Yeah, an error occurred.
That But it says it on the registration page for the event.
When you try to register for the.
Oh, yeah, well, okay, well then I should go, I definitely want to go back in and dig around with, I have to do it on a screen where I can actually see things, but sure, let's do that. Now, even though I'm on the web app blade here, there is a link to Application Insights way down here. So I can jump from there into the Application Insights pane, and let's go to well, let's go up. Where are we? Here it is. I think it's here. No, it's not here. It's near the top. I'm being stupid and I'm missing it. Looking for one called failures. And I don't know why I'm not seeing it. My eyesight is getting really bad.
Sub menu, is it under something else?
I don't think so. All right, let's go in this way. There it is. Okay, failures. Oh, let me mention this though. Some of the stuff that we've been looking at tonight is in preview mode, and you can turn off anything in this portal that's preview if you don't want to see things that are in preview. Okay? When you create a new App Insights resource, most of the preview things that exist at the time you create it will be enabled by default. But if you don't want that, for whatever reason, you can click this link here under Configure. See where it says, up here it says auto enroll in future previews. Okay, so by default it'll say auto enroll in future previews and enable all the ones that exist right now, except for some reason this bottom one is not on, and I haven't turned it on. Okay, but anyway, if you go home and try this and you don't see some of these things, it could be because you don't have, it's a preview feature and you don't have this turned on. So this is a place to go and check in case you run into a problem like I just did and I couldn't find something. So anyway, here's failures preview. And so there's been a failed request, no doubt about it, right here. So let's see if it'll tell me anything about that. View in analytics. Let's see. No results found. Oh, well, this is a pretty tight window here, it looks like. 11:14 to 11:14. Let's try 11:10.
You put the end date before the start date.
And it didn't catch that. That's interesting. Let's go to tomorrow. Okay, there's some all right, so you can just barely see it right here. Okay, here's some failures. Now, you see this little circle right here? You can barely see it. Okay, there's a circle right here. I can click that circle, I think. There were 110 failures, and that was actually when I was running a stress test. to be able to do, no, this is not. So again, it's, I think we're having trouble with the projector, making it harder to see. There should be a little blink in here somewhere that would give me a chance to go to some smart analysis. Let me see.
Well, you could try changing the theme again, see if it's easier to see.
Let's try this. Smart diagnostics. Just turned on. There. Let's try the blue theme, see if that helps any. Okay, so we can see it a little better. But I'm bummed out because I want to be able to show you how it can link to artificial intelligence, which you're supposed to be able to do by, let's try this. Nope, I don't see it. Okay, so unfortunately, because we're at the end of the presentation, I don't have time to figure out why I don't see it. But trust me, if you try this yourselves, when you go into that analytics view, it will go in and make some calls behind the scenes to Microsoft's machine learning services. And the machine learning services will look at it will look for patterns in the history of your App Insights stream, and it will see if it can, first of all, if it can detect a pattern, and secondly, it will compare what it's seeing with other patterns that it's observed in other people's web applications. Which it's distilled into this big body of knowledge that's stored up in its machine learning databases, and it will make suggestions. And the suggestion might be nothing more than simply saying, when these failures occur, some other things tend to be happening at the same time. Okay, and the things it could be noticing could be any combination of what particular thing in your web app it was calling, what particular kinds of parameters were being passed in, where the request was coming from. There was the source of the location of the browser or the network that the request came from, and it can also look at what else was happening in the environment. What was the CPU consumption at the time? So it not only finds bugs and exceptions, but it also looks for performance problems. This is actually one of the cooler things about it to me is that it can say, your response time fell over a certain period of time, and during that time your memory consumption was high, or there was something else going on, or it might notice that there was an outage, a service problem down at the Azure level, and it wasn't your app's fault at all. Okay, so being able to see these kinds of tips and having them pop up in these charts as you're observing them is a cool feature, and it could be very useful when you have problems that don't seem to have any discernible cause. It works great on my workstation, it worked great in QA, now we're having all this trouble in production and we don't know why, right? So I'll leave it as a homework exercise to go home and look at that. And it could be also, I'm recording this and I hope the recording quality is better than what we're seeing on this projector, so maybe all this has been, it's going to look really silly if people see it staring them right at them. By the way, we do we do put these recordings out on YouTube now. So you can see the one we made last month at YouTube, and we are going over the next couple of months probably do a little redesigning of our website, looking for this registration bug, but also putting links on our event page so that you can find the videos that we're making. Now you don't get to see me; you only get to see what was on the desktop. You get to hear my voice, which is the best part of me. So that's that. In case you want to review or show your friends. Okay, so with that, please fill out your evals, and please come back next year. And does anybody have an answer to our trivia question? More specific. All right, so the trivia question is, I don't know, what does it say? Trivia question says, according to the plain dealer, what new type of law enforcement cameras will soon be installed throughout Cuyahoga County? More specific. He said traffic camera. More specific. No, they're not red light cameras. Pardon me?
Body camera.
No.
No, I mean, they're general cameras that can be used by law enforcement to solve crimes.
They are going to be used by law enforcement to solve crimes, but they have a very specific purpose. Think about Microsoft Cognitive Services. They are license plate reading cameras. They're going to photograph, they're going to take a picture every second, and every car's license plate that they see in the image, each second, they're going to do an OCR scan on the license plate, and if they can, whatever they think the license plate says, they're going to save that in a database. Okay, so the presence of each license plate every second going through a particular intersection is going to be in a database. And if the police know the crooks went a certain direction, they can find out what their license number was. Or if they know the crooks got away in a car with this license plate, they can trace where it went. Or if they just want to know where you've been lately and they know your license number, they can look it up. Supposedly not. Supposedly not. And I'm sure they're storing this data in an utterly safe source place, like up in Azure, for instance, and nobody's going to hack into it, and there'll always be a warrant for everything they do. And that's coming to your neighborhood soon if you live in Cleveland. Cuyahoga County, that's right. Cuyahoga County. Yeah, they're having one in my town, for sure. Okay, any questions? I guess I should ask if there are any questions. No questions. Okay, I hope that's because this has been useful. And thanks for coming.